The sun was just peeking over the horizon as Sarah maneuvered her wheelchair down the freshly paved concrete ramp leading from her front door. The soft morning light glinted off the metal rails, a tangible symbol of the months of struggle and strained negotiations that had brought her to this moment. Suddenly, a shrill voice pierced the peaceful quiet. "What do you think you're doing?" Sarah spun around to see her neighbor, Karen, storming across the lawn, her face twisted in a mask of outrage. "I'm just going about my day," Sarah replied calmly, gripping the wheels of her chair. The ramp was approved by the HOA. "Approved?" Karen screeched. "That monstrosity is an eyesore. It decreases my property value." She took a menacing step closer. "I won't stand for this. This neighborhood has standards, and you're not going to ruin them." Sarah's heart raced as she watched Karen's fists clench. "Karen, please." "No." Karen cut her off. "I'm calling code enforcement. That ramp is coming down, one way or another." With that, she whirled around and stormed back to her house, leaving Sarah alone with a growing sense of dread. Later that morning, a knock at the door jolted Sarah from her worried thoughts. Opening it, she found two uniformed inspectors standing on her porch. "Ma'am, we've received a complaint about an unauthorized construction project on your property," one of them said sternly. "We need to take a look." Sarah's palms grew sweaty as she ushered them outside. The ramp was approved by the HOA, she explained, gesturing to the smooth concrete and sturdy railings. "It's to help me get in and out of my home safely." The inspectors examined the ramp in silence, taking notes and muttering to each other. Finally, the taller one turned to Sarah, his expression unreadable. "We'll need to issue a citation and order you to remove the ramp within 30 days, he announced. "It doesn't meet the neighborhood's aesthetic standards." Sarah's heart sank. "But that's not fair," she protested. "I need that ramp to get around. It's not hurting anyone." The inspector held up a hand. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but those are the rules. You'll have to take it down." As the inspectors left, Sarah sank back into her chair, her mind racing. She couldn't lose the ramp. It had made such a difference in her life. But going against the HOA's decision could mean hefty fines or even legal action. Steeling herself, she wheeled back inside, determined to find a way to keep her hard-won accessibility. With a heavy heart, Sarah dialed her friend Emily's number. She knew she would need help navigating this bureaucratic nightmare. "The HOA is making me take down my ramp," Emily exclaimed, her voice dripping with outrage. "That's ridiculous. You need that for accessibility." "I know," Sarah sighed, rubbing her temples. "But Karen complained, and now the code inspectors say I have to remove it. I don't know what to do." "Okay, don't worry," Emily replied, her tone shifting to one of determination. "We're going to fight this. First, let's get a lawyer involved. I'll make some calls and see who can help." Within a few days, Sarah found herself sitting across from a stern-faced attorney named Mr. Garrison. He listened intently as she recounted the confrontation with Karen and the code enforcement debacle. "This is a clear case of disability discrimination," he said firmly. "The Fair Housing Act requires the HOA to provide reasonable accommodations for residents with disabilities. Removing your ramp would be a violation of federal law." Sarah felt a surge of hope. "So what can we do?" "We'll file an official complaint with the Department of Housing and Urban Development," Mr. Garrison explained. "That will trigger an investigation and force the HOA to justify their decision. In the meantime, I'll send them a cease and desist letter to stop any enforcement action against the ramp." As Sarah left the lawyer's office, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of apprehension. Going up against the powerful HOA was daunting, but the thought of losing her hard-won independence was even more terrifying. Gripping the wheels of her chair, she steeled herself for the fight ahead. Over the next few weeks, Sarah found herself embroiled in a bureaucratic battle as her lawyer meticulously built the case against the HOA. Stacks of medical records, accessibility guidelines, and legal precedents were assembled, each piece of evidence chipping away at the HOA's position. Meanwhile, the threatening letters from the Code Enforcement Office continued to arrive, each one more ominous than the last. Sarah could feel the tension building as she waited anxiously for the DHUD investigation to move forward. One afternoon, as Sarah was wheeling down the sidewalk, she spotted Karen striding towards her, a triumphant grin on her face. "I heard your lawyer is getting involved," Karen sneered. "Doesn't matter. The HOA board is on my side. That ramp is coming down, one way or another." Sarah felt her heart begin to race. "Karen, please, this isn't about you or your property values," she pleaded. "It's about my ability to live independently. Surely you can understand that." "Understand?" Karen scoffed. "All I understand is that your eyesore of a ramp is ruining the neighborhood's curb appeal, and I won't stand for it." With that, she turned on her heel and marched away, leaving Sarah feeling more helpless than ever. Later that day, as Sarah sat in her living room, staring at the ramp through the window, her phone suddenly rang. It was Mr. Garrison. "Sarah, I have some good news," he announced. "The DHUD investigation has concluded, and they've issued a ruling in our favor. The HOA has been ordered to approve the ramp and cease any enforcement action." Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. "That's incredible," she exclaimed. "Does this mean I can keep the ramp?" "Absolutely," Mr. Garrison replied. "The HOA has no choice but to comply. They've been ordered to pay all of your legal fees as well." As Sarah hung up the phone, she couldn't help but smile. She had stood up to the HOA and won, proving that accessibility and inclusion were more important than arbitrary aesthetic standards. But she knew the battle was far from over. Karen was sure to retaliate, and the HOA might try to find other ways to make her life difficult. Steeling herself for the challenges to come, Sarah wheeled over to the ramp, running her fingers along the smooth concrete. This was more than just a structure. It was a symbol of her hard-won independence, and she was determined to protect it at all costs. The next morning, Sarah awoke to the sound of commotion outside. Peering out the window, she gasped as she saw a work crew swiftly dismantling her wheelchair ramp. Panic gripping her chest, she frantically wheeled to the front door, yanking it open just as the last section of the ramp was being lifted away. "What is the meaning of this?" she cried, her voice quivering with anger. The crew foreman turned to her, an apologetic look on his face. "Ma'am, we've been instructed by the HOA to remove this ramp immediately." "But that's impossible," Sarah exclaimed. "I have a ruling from the DHUD saying they can't do this." "I'm sorry, but the HOA says they filed an appeal," the foreman replied. "Until that's resolved, we have to follow their orders." Sarah felt her heart sink as she watched the last of the ramp disappear into the back of a truck. Turning to the foreman, she pleaded, "Please, you have to stop. I need that ramp to get in and out of my own home." The foreman shook his head sadly. "My hands are tied, ma'am. I have to follow the HOA's instructions." As the work crew departed, Sarah felt a surge of panic and despair. How was she supposed to navigate the steep steps without her ramp? The thought of being trapped inside her own home was overwhelming. Wheeling back inside, Sarah immediately called Mr. Garrison, her voice trembling. "They took down the ramp," she cried. "The HOA has filed an appeal, and now the code enforcement is forcing me to remove it." "Unbelievable," Mr. Garrison growled. "This is a clear violation of the DHUD ruling. I'll file an emergency injunction to stop any further enforcement action." Sarah nodded, her mind racing. "In the meantime, what am I supposed to do? I can't get in or out of my house." "Hold tight," Mr. Garrison replied. "I'll see if we can get a temporary ramp installed until this is resolved. Don't worry, Sarah. We're not going to let them get away with this." As Sarah hung up the phone, she felt a renewed sense of determination. She had come too far to let the HOA and Karen win. This fight was far from over. Over the next few days, Sarah found herself trapped in her own home, unable to venture outside without the assistance of her wheelchair ramp. Each time she looked out the window, she would see Karen strolling by, a smug expression on her face. The waiting for Mr. Garrison's emergency injunction was agonizing, and Sarah couldn't help but worry about the implications of being homebound. Would she lose her job? Miss important medical appointments? The uncertainty weighed heavily on her. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Sarah heard a knock at the door. Opening it, she found two men carrying a temporary metal ramp. "Ma'am, we're here to install a temporary accessibility ramp per court order," one of them announced. Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her as she watched them secure the ramp to her front steps. At last, she would be able to regain some of her independence. As the men finished their work, Sarah heard the distinct sound of Karen's voice from across the street. "What is the meaning of this?" she shrieked, marching over to the workers. "I thought I made it clear that ramp had to go." The workers exchanged a glance. Then one of them replied, "Ma'am, we're following a court order. This ramp is staying put until the appeal process is resolved." Karen's face flushed with anger. "This is an outrage. I won't stand for it." She turned to Sarah, her eyes narrowed. "Mark my words, this isn't over." With that, she stormed back to her house, slamming the door behind her. Sarah couldn't help but feel a twinge of unease. Karen was clearly not going to give up without a fight, and she worried about what the vindictive neighbor might do next. Steeling herself, Sarah wheeled down the temporary ramp, relishing the freedom of movement it provided. She knew the battle was far from over, but for now, she was grateful to have this small victory. As she made her way down the street, she couldn't help but wonder what other surprises might be in store. One thing was certain. She was determined to stand her ground and fight for her right to accessibility, no matter the cost. The next few weeks were a flurry of legal activity as Mr. Garrison worked tirelessly to defend Sarah's case. Briefs were filed, depositions taken, and arguments presented before the judge. Throughout it all, Sarah remained steadfast, determined to see this through to the end. During a brief respite, Sarah decided to take a stroll around the neighborhood, relishing the freedom of movement afforded by the temporary ramp. As she wheeled past Karen's house, however, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. Propped against the side of the garage was a sledgehammer, its metal head gleaming ominously. Sarah's heart raced as she considered the implications. Surely Karen wouldn't be so brazen as to sabotage the ramp, even with a court order in place. But the very sight of that tool filled her with a sense of dread. Hurrying back to her house, Sarah immediately called Mr. Garrison. "The HOA has filed an appeal, and now Karen has a sledgehammer sitting outside her house," she blurted out. "I'm worried she's going to try to destroy the ramp." "This is a serious concern," Mr. Garrison replied, his voice grave. "I'll inform the court and request additional security measures be put in place to protect the ramp. In the meantime, I'd suggest you keep a close eye on things and report any suspicious activity immediately." Sarah nodded, her hands trembling. "I just can't believe they're going to such lengths to fight this. Don't they understand how important the ramp is to me? Unfortunately, some people are blinded by their own biases and sense of entitlement," Mr. Garrison said, his tone hardening. "But we're not going to let them win. I'll do everything in my power to ensure that ramp stays in place." As Sarah hung up the phone, she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of unease. The thought of Karen sabotaging the ramp, of being trapped in her own home once again, was almost too much to bear. But she knew she had to stay strong, to fight for her right to independence and accessibility. Steeling herself, she wheeled back outside, her eyes scanning the neighborhood for any sign of danger. This was a battle she couldn't afford to lose. The following days were fraught with tension as Sarah vigilantly monitored the temporary ramp, her nerves on edge. She found herself jumping at every unexpected sound, constantly scanning the neighborhood for any sign of Karen or the dreaded sledgehammer. Despite her best efforts, however, Sarah couldn't be everywhere at once. One afternoon, as she was grabbing a quick lunch, she received a frantic call from a neighbor. "Sarah, you need to get home right away," the woman cried. "Someone's destroyed the ramp." Sarah's heart sank as she raced back to her house, her wheelchair propelling her forward as fast as she could go. Sure enough, as she rounded the corner, she was met with a horrifying sight. The temporary ramp lay in a twisted, splintered heap, the pieces scattered across her front lawn. Tears of frustration and anguish welled up in Sarah's eyes as she surveyed the damage. Wheeling up to the debris, she gently ran her fingers over the broken metal, her heart sinking. Suddenly, a familiar voice rang out from across the street. "I told you that eyesore wouldn't last," Karen sneered, her arms crossed smugly. Sarah whirled around, her eyes blazing with fury. "You did this, didn't you?" she accused, her voice trembling. Karen's only response was a condescending chuckle. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Accidents happen, Sarah. Maybe you should just accept that you don't belong in this neighborhood." With that, she turned and disappeared back into her house, leaving Sarah alone with the shattered remnants of her independence. Overwhelmed by a torrent of emotions, Sarah wheeled back inside, her mind racing. How could she have let this happen? She had fought so hard, only to have it all come crashing down. Pressing her face into her hands, Sarah broke down, her sobs echoing through the empty house. In that moment, she felt more alone and helpless than ever before. The battle had been lost, but Sarah knew she couldn't give up. Somewhere deep within, a spark of determination was still burning. She would find a way to rise above this setback and reclaim her rightful place in the world. In the aftermath of the ramp's destruction, Sarah was left feeling utterly defeated. The legal battle had taken an immense emotional toll, and now, with her means of independence stripped away, she found herself once again trapped in her own home. But Sarah was not one to give up easily. Wiping away her tears, she wheeled over to the phone and dialed Mr. Garrison's number, her voice resolute. "They've destroyed the ramp," she said without preamble. "Karen is behind it, I'm sure of it." Mr. Garrison let out a heavy sigh. "I suspected as much. Don't worry, Sarah. We're not going to let them get away with this. I'll file an emergency motion with the court and see if we can expedite a hearing." Sarah nodded, her grip tightening on the phone. "In the meantime, what am I supposed to do? I can't even get in and out of my own house." "I'll see if we can arrange for a temporary lift or other accessibility solution to be installed immediately," Mr. Garrison assured her. "We're not going to let this setback stop us." As Sarah hung up the phone, a glimmer of hope began to take root in her heart. She had come too far to let Karen and the HOA win. This was a fight for her independence, her dignity, and her very right to exist in the world as a disabled person. In the days that followed, a new ramp was swiftly installed, this one reinforced with heavy-duty steel and equipped with a security system to deter any further acts of vandalism. Sarah watched as the workers carefully assembled the structure, a sense of relief washing over her. When the job was complete, Sarah wheeled out to the ramp, running her fingers along the smooth metal. It was a symbol of her resilience, a testament to the power of determination and the unwavering pursuit of justice. As she gazed out at the neighborhood, Sarah could see Karen peering out from behind her curtains, her face twisted in a scowl. But Sarah refused to be cowed. She had won this battle, and she would continue to fight for her right to live freely and independently, no matter what obstacles stood in her way. With a renewed sense of purpose, Sarah wheeled down the ramp and out into the world, her head held high. This was only the beginning. Battle had taken an immense emotional toll, and now, with her means of independence stripped away, she found herself once again trapped in her own home. But Sarah was not one to give up easily. Wiping away her tears, she wheeled over to the phone and dialed Mr. Garrison's number, her voice resolute. "They've destroyed the ramp," she said without preamble. Karen is behind it, I'm sure of it. Mr. Garrison let out a heavy sigh. I suspected as much. Don't worry, Sarah. We're not going to let them get away with this. I'll file an emergency motion with the court and see if we can expedite a hearing. Sarah nodded, her grip tightening on the phone. In the meantime, what am I supposed to do? I can't even get in and out of my own house. I'll see if we can arrange for a temporary lift or other accessibility solution to be installed immediately, Mr. Garrison assured her. We're not going to let this setback stop us. As Sarah hung up the phone, a glimmer of hope began to take root in her heart. She had come too far to let Karen and the HOA win. This was a fight for her independence, her dignity, and her very right to exist in the world as a disabled person. In the days that followed, a new ramp was swiftly installed, this one reinforced with heavy-duty steel and equipped with a security system to deter any further acts of vandalism. Sarah watched as the workers carefully assembled the structure, a sense of relief washing over her. When the job was complete, Sarah wheeled out to the ramp, running her fingers along the smooth metal. It was a symbol of her resilience, a testament to the power of determination and the unwavering pursuit of justice. As she gazed out at the neighborhood, Sarah could see Karen peering out from behind her curtains, her face twisted in a scowl. But Sarah refused to be cowed. She had won this battle, and she would continue to fight for her right to live freely and independently, no matter what obstacles stood in her way. With a renewed sense of purpose, Sarah wheeled down the ramp and out into the world, her head held high. This was only the beginning.